One, two, three, four.
You are listening to SKYLIT, the SKYLIT Books podcast. SKYLIT Books is a general interest bookstore in the Los Feliz neighborhood in Los Angeles. You can shop with us from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. or visit us online 24/7 at skylitbooks.com. Follow along at SKYLIT Books Instagram and Twitter. You can subscribe to the podcast on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Thank you for listening, and now on to the episode.
Hello, my beautiful and lovely listeners, and welcome to SKYLIT. This is the SKYLIT Books podcast, and I'm your host, Lance Morgan. Today, I'm so thrilled to welcome Sebastian Moya to read from his new poetry collection, BLUETO, and after, we'll have a conversation. But before I introduce him, I want to remind you that SKYLIT Books is now open for in-store browsing, but please follow the CDC mask mandate and bring your masks, and please be respectful of the customers and staff there, but come on by. You can also always shop online online 24/7 at www.skylitbooks.com, where you have in-store pickup options and shipping. Sebastian Wilfredo Moya is a poet and a writer of fiction. He was born in El Paso, Texas, and occasionally raised in Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua. Moya graduated with a degree in narrative structure from the University of Southern California. Most of the time, he is bustling between Los Angeles and the borderland or other places. Sebastian, I'm so excited to have you on today.
Hi there, Lance. I'm delighted to be here. I really appreciate you making some time for me. Sincerely grateful. Love Skylight. I've
Thank you.
been going there, so very excited to be on the show.
No, thank you so much for being on. I'm excited to get into the middle of this, but you have a reading for us today?
Sure do. I got 4 poems. I'm going to be doing BLUETO, Rubble, Con Vivir, and Ode to Two. So BLUETO is the first poem. Ode to Two is the last poem.
Perfect. I'll let you take it away.
Rock and roll. BLUETO. Like any other day, count evaporating rays. Will you be quick to capture photon rapture, chasing sundial bricks, stationary kicks, shadows well spent, sarsens and feathered serpents? They knew how to witness the inherited miraculous. What can be built on your empire of silt? Black too, colors hurried in a day buried, praying in witching hours for watchmakers' powers, to hold small hands and forget the sands. You are armed with a condition capable of amnesia and fission. Still, in the sun's rest, the hourglass in your chest. Acquiesce another end, never yielding bend, BLUETO. I took my uncle to Silver Lake. He's lived in Hollywood for ages and hasn't seen what it's become. He says it's too difficult, and I laughed it off. I told him about Dance Yourself Clean and all the new ramen places. We passed the cemetery at the exit, and he told me about the addiction and AIDS. WeHo in the 80s was supposed to be a haven. Home was too far away, except it wasn't. He counted 8 funerals there. Rehab, jail, the hospital, the worst places to be. When he was my age, he said it was like being a fireman. There was crumbling at all hours of the night. All the famous bars are gone. Rent went through the roof. It's all indifference now. Forever young faces never got to chide that. They built over the rubble. I try to ask questions. I try to understand. There are too many stories, he says. Unfinished, but another time. At least the cemetery is still there. Can't turn a graveyard into a ramen shop. We kept driving. That's Rubble. This one's called Con Vivir. It takes some effort in those long Uber rides not to scroll through Twitter. Lord knows you never know. It's true we're all detectives scanning the details, a dream catcher, an O medallion, a rosary, a disco ball, any number of flags. For me, it's hard to ignore sunglasses or a mustache. ¿De dónde eres? Ah, cabrón, ¿hablas español? Simón, soy de la frontera. That gets a smile. That cuts through tense minutes when you're late to happy hour and your friend is visiting from out of town. I take my eyes from the estimated time of arrival and focus on the rearview mirror. I tell him El Paso is more than Breaking Bad or Sicario o esas mamadas, and that gets a laugh. I tell him Juarez is more than the murders, though it's difficult to see around them. Nah, pues, está cabrón. I want to hear about Michoacán, Oaxaca, and on occasion, Jalisco, many times El Salvador, Honduras, or Colombia. ¿Tienes hijos? ¿Cuánto llevas aquí? Ya. ¿Cómo te gusta Gringolandia? And that gets a laugh. I always learn something new, a story, a lesson, a joke, but it's always, nombre es muy diferente el convivir. I think about brinca-brincas in front of gated houses on Vermont, wine tasting on Hollywood lawns, cigarettes with strangers that never smoke, waiting for my quesadillas at Leo's, brown bag birthday Hollywood star tours, catching up at a Dodgers game, $8 haircuts with complimentary Pacificos and chisme, the bartender teaching me it's simply called the bow, the cumulative 93.5 experience when Boyz II Men sprawls from convertibles, summer months in full swing. Ya estamos, güerito. Suerte, hombre, en serio. Suerte mis huevos, tira paro. That gets a laugh in 30%. Then I hit the bar door and it's back to English. It's $8 beers, 12 with tip. We keep our distance from other tables. They keep their distance from ours. Es muy diferente el convivir. ¿Se extraña? One last poem. Ode to Two, which is the last one. Ode to Two. Easy to forget incongruous moments, shuffled in between sensational binary. On a purple sky is the hidden hour of a watchmaker's power. In the face of all that is, to hold the little pieces, putting moments together. You're equipped, in a smile from a stranger, in your cousin's wedding, in a waft of curry on your way to work, in a child's distant laugh in Kenneth Hahn, in the place between the first and the second sip of a cold beer, in Disneyland for your mom's 50th, in purple rain and traffic, in a funny story about your dad, in a drunken voicemail from an old friend, in the second letter from a distant lover, in the last chapter of your favorite book, and the second you choose your favorite shirt for the day. On a purple sky is the atrophy of an orange and melancholy. It is your best fight against the fading light. Remember too, because it is you. There you go.
That was great. Thank you for reading those poems. I was following along too. I was like, let me hear these out loud. No, it was great to hear these poems that I've read. How are you doing today, Sebastian?
I'm doing sensational. Thank you for asking.
Great. That's great. I was gonna say we're on separate coasts right now, so this is a long distance podcast.
Long distance podcast. We're always gonna make it work.
We're always gonna make it work, and that's the beauty of technology now. No, thank you.
It's already happy hour on this coast, so I've got my glass of Fernet.
Perfect.
And I'm hoping that you do the same when it's your time, when you catch up.
Around that time, I'll be heading into SKYLIT. So yeah, sure, yeah, why not? I'll go with a glass of Fernet. Don't tell anyone I said that. I would never ever drink at SKYLIT. That's my official statement on that.
Between you and the listeners.
Yeah, to listen. That's my official statement. No, Sebastian, let's get into it. I want to talk about these poems. Because they felt so personal in a very specific way, a very unique experience. While reading them, I felt just like this sense of identity, not a crisis of identity, but like a introspection on your specific identity. How did that come about? Did you start off wanting to not research, but search for your own identity through these poems, or did you like already know that was, did you like come across it? Was that something that just came out of writing?
Yeah, I mean, poetry has always been my immediate coping mechanism for a lot of things. I mean, I think that a lot of the times we pick up the pen is because of we're trying to express ourselves through the pain or through whatever we're going through. But I am somebody that always tries to dig a little deeper into what I'm doing, trying to see what foundation I'm building for what's going forward. Poetry is a great way to kind of check in. I call it my metaphysical GPS. It's just kind of like what's going on, like, you know, time, place, whatever, checking in on that. And by doing that, you kind of mine some good material and some good thoughts. And this book is just like what was going on in a very strange transition period in my life, and what it's like to be figuring it out in Los Angeles in your early 20s, which is, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, oh, do I know? No, that, I mean, it didn't feel just like, you know, Los Angeles, though. I felt like there were so many places in both geographically and time that it took, that your poems take place in, but also talk about, like the poem that you just did, The Rebel, you just talked about, no, you just spoke. I feel like you were talking about, I mean, and tell me if I'm wrong, understanding Los Angeles in two periods of time and trying to like put yourself in the perspective of that, but also knowing that there's like a lot you can't know about too. Um, how was that like trying to search for these answers? Like, do you think you found any, or do you think that like you're still looking?
I think I'll tackle that in two parts. I think that with Rebel specifically, it was kind of a reckoning with an older version of Los Angeles and what we experience now. So I'm obsessed with like the Rainbow Bar and Grill and the Burgundy Room and the specific old type of culture of Los Angeles that is like a dangling carrot for a lot of people, including myself, where it's like, there's this old relic of what the city used to be. And then you talk to people who lived in that era and they're just like, oh yeah, like all of that is gone. But specifically with my uncle's story of dealing with, you know, the AIDS epidemic in Los Angeles, and seeing, you're like, oh yeah, it's all bright and rosy, right? You know, this old school Los Angeles. And then you just hear, you know, all these terrible stories of every era has something that affects them deeply.
Right.
So, you know, it's never as we've, you know, fantasize it to be. And that was kind of my answer. That was like, okay, like it doesn't matter, you know, where you live or what era or etc. It's a moment where you realize like you gotta live in the now. We kept driving, you know, we kept going. And that's kind of the point, is you just keep going and looking and searching. And for, you know, a second answer that I would give for did I find it, you know, you find enough. I feel like I feel like if you find it, then I think you're being a little too accepting. Like I think like there's always a little bit that's like a sour taste in your mouth, and you're like, that's okay. Like it's not supposed to make perfect sense, but it does have to make sense. And I think that I'm okay with that. You know, it's a level of acceptance that you have to have, and also a level of like, you know, that hunger, that dissatisfaction, and like I want more, but you got to deal with what you got. I don't know if any of that made sense.
No, I feel like it does. It's like it's very, yeah, it keeps the it's not the destination of finding that answer, it's the journey, it's the keep searching, it's that non-satisfaction of finding an answer, it's the satisfaction trying to find the answer, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think that was a great answer for that. But I'll keep asking.
Up for me.
But listen, no, is that the answer, or are we going to keep searching for that answer? That's the question.
That's meta. Is that the answer of answers? Oh my God.
Yeah, the answer of answers, or is it?
I haven't had enough Fernet for that.
Listen, I think that's there. Maybe I did have some Fernet before I started this, because that's where it would take me. Something else that I really did like about your work too was, you know, something that I feel a lot in myself too, which is at being a black first generation American, this sense of like I not knowing where you belong, like finding in that one poem you also just read, this idea of like I'm this person in this one space, but then I have to become this other person in this other space, because that's the identity of having so many different cultures you belong to. And in that the one Ode to Two, I believe. I might have mixed up my poems there, but you were just like talking to that Uber driver and having that, great experience there, and then walking into the bar and realizing you were like just becoming a different person there. And I did say the right name, right?
Convivir is the Uber
Convivir.
driver.
It's Convivir. I mixed them up in my head. I'm so sorry. Listeners, forgive me. No, Convivir, like, yeah, it had that, and I felt it. I was like, I don't have this specific experience, but I've been in situations like that before where it's like, oh, there's a little bit of melancholy there too, because you want to stay in that space sometimes. You're sad that you have to switch around. Was that something that like you wanted to explore in this work? Like just the idea of like different identities in different places?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a big part of my life, is identity crises perpetually. Convivir is a specific example of more of the joy of that, of more of the joy of being able to hop, and it's in a space like Los Angeles. So, as a white sicken, and it's a very common term, it's, you see me walking down the street and you're like, that's a guy whose family is probably too proud of being Irish or something. And and then you're like, oh, and like, somebody here in New York, not too long ago, it was just like, walk down the street, somebody says something to me in Spanish, and I'm like, hey, ¿qué pedo? Like, yo sé español, cabrón. Like, I can immediately like switch into, Mexican Seb. And it's a weird back and forth that I've always dealt with. Convivir specifically is one of those ires of, convivir is my favorite word in Spanish. I think that I established that. And it's a very interesting word to explain to people. It means, the closest thing you can come to is like hanging out, but like convivir, like vivir is live, like co-living. But it's a beautiful word that just means like, hey, like I just want to come over and live with you for a while. And it's just like hanging out, right? It's just literally just the way that you live. It's the way that you talk to people, spend time with people. It's a beautiful word. And being able to talk to people from different countries. I mean, Mexico is enormous. I mean, Michoacan, Oaxaca, Baja, like all these different places that funnel into Los Angeles, so far apart, but they all are like, but the convivir is different and something that we can all be like, yes. So when I'm in Juarez with my family, like, I mean, it's so funny when I explain to like my white friends, even though I'm white, but like my like white friends, about like, yeah, we had mariachi over, and they're like, that's funny, and I'm like, no, like seriously, like we had mariachi at my place for like 4 hours, and sang and drank together and like convivir, and it's like a beautiful thing that like my family loves to do, and it's something that translates to a lot of other people. So it is one of those weird moments that you're like, and especially in Los Angeles, where it can catch you off guard, where you're either like, oh yeah, there's this piece of me, which it never feels too distant, but it's just like, it's nice to dip my toes into that, and then go to the bar with my white friends, and then I have my Latinx group that I hang out with in LA, and there's always a lot of back and forth. My next work that I'm working on deals a lot with identity, and I'm working on that right now. But I think it's something that it's a fundamental part of being from the US, is like, what am I? And people who are like 4th, 5th generation Americans, that's why they like stick so firmly to like, this is our country. Like that's all they got there. That's
Yeah.
They got the one thing, and like God bless them, you know. But people like you and I have this weird back and forth, and so
Yeah.
a lot of us are like, one thing you and I can relate to, even though we have very different backgrounds, is like, what am I? And you're like, yup.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's like, and I've had a conversation with a man who I will not talk too much about because he was definitely trying to provoke me in this conversation, but he was very confrontational on this idea that, like, why do black people, when they say black, it's capitalized, versus white people it's non-capitalized. And I was like, to empower, we've done a lot against black people in this country, and it's to empower versus white. And he was very offended by that because he was like, I am Armenian, and that should not have to do, and I shouldn't be grouped with that. I'm like, yeah, but that's the curse of whiteness too, in a way, in America, because it takes away that identity that you are a part of a group. Outside the idea of America, there's a lot of, everyone has array of identity in them, and like
Absolutely.
the whiteness in this country erases that.
Yeah,
And I mean,
agree.
yeah,
And there's so much to like. It's like, relax. There's so much to pull from. I mean, you look at anything pre, like, I don't know, like 1950s or 40s, when African Americans really started to come into the mainstream pop culture. It's like you got a lot of people for a long time. Like, relax. We can talk about we can talk about all the, and it's like they never appreciate the cool people that have come before. It's always like, I just love this particular part of whiteness, and it's like you're not even like taking like pride in like the United States and all the things that have gone through it. It's just, or like the I don't know. It's such a weird identity crisis that I'm just glad I'm not too much a part of.
No, I mean, it's, same, where it's like, I mean, it's something that I definitely, and you might understand this too. I did have to deal with, because there's like this, I feel like for people like us who are children of like different cultures, and different cultures outside of America, especially, you have to deal with that at a very young age, because it's in your face. It's something that you have to see. We're like, now, especially with like, all of the movements, all these conversations about identity and borders and what this means, it's like a lot of other people who are older now are dealing with these questions, where I'm like, I dealt with this. I've come to peace with who I am and what's going on in my life. And like, I'm sorry you're going through this now, a lot older, but like, it's I
have encountered those, for sure. I mean, I'll say this though. My experience has been, I'm sure, 1,000 times easier, just from the color of my skin. I mean, I can walk down the street and I have a very different experience than yourself, I'm sure. And like with me, it's more of like a peeve of like, I can't believe you didn't think I was Mexican. And then like my day is exactly the same. Whereas, yourself, I'm sure it can just be so upsetting in a lot of different ways. So I'd rather not directly compare our experiences, because it's a lot easier for me.
No.
But I will say though, and also growing up, I grew up in a border town. So you had, for me, it was where I went to high school, it was the American football players who, had people like our quarterback would wake up every morning in Juarez and drive, he would wake up at 5 a.m., drive across the border and get to high school by 7. So he's waking up at like 5 a.m. And then if we had morning practice, he'd wake up at like 4:30 to go to morning practice. So like he was born and raised in Juarez, and he went to our high school in the US. And then I had, military kids from Fort Bliss that were from Alabama, Georgia, etc., and were there in like Mexican population, this like Latinx population, right? And it's like, I don't know. I got very fortunate that and I think we all feel that way, is that El Paso Juarez is like a completely different world. I'm so proud of being fronterizo. When people ask where I'm from, I'm like, I'm a border boy. Like, no sé de uno, no sé del otro. Like, I'm just from the border. Like, and it's a difference of identity than being like, especially in Texas, where people have so much pride in that identity. And in Mexico, people have a very strong sense of pride as well. But being from the border is its own thing. And I'm very lucky to say I'm a part of that small niche.
I mean, yeah, and that's, I mean, must have been an amazing like place to grow up and like, you know, amazing identity to carry with you to Los Angeles, which is also like, you know, there's that here in a way, not like the very literal border, but like a lot of people who I feel like LA has its own kind of border in a way. It's a very own kind of like, these are the spaces where you grew up maybe in one culture, especially with like, I feel like this I mean, the conversation of gentrification now, where people are like, this is I knew this town when it was this, and I still live here, but now it's changing and I have to exist in these two worlds now. The world I grew up in versus the world that it's changed in front of me. But I mean, I might be just trying to reach into something just something else here. But I also feel like this is a good transition. It leads into your poems a little bit too, because there's this, I feel like, sadness in your poems that I see in a lot of, let's
Let's do it.
let's do it. No, there's this like, you know, millennial sadness, this 20s sadness of like living in LA and saying, oh, I didn't get to experience this while being here. I didn't get to experience the ruins of what the ruins of LA were. Like, I didn't get to see this part of what the oceans used to be like, what the city life used to be like. It's this now. It's the coffee shops. It's these restaurants. It's these things I like, but I also, you know, am nostalgic for things I never got to experience. And I feel like it's a real thing. I have those conversations with people all the time who were like, wow, when I was younger, I used to do this on the street all the time, but now it's gone. And I hear it and I'm like, well, I never got to experience that. And now I'm sad I didn't get to. Can you talk about that idea in your poetry, which I feel like I saw a lot of in it?
Yeah, I feel like it was, I like to think my poetry references more of like this, the carrot on the carrot on the stick, the dangling this thing in front of us all that a lot of people about Los Angeles can agree, or who have lived there for a long time will just be like, oh, I thought it was going to be this and it was completely not that. Like it's an elusive, you know, dreamy place where, I mean, there's so many metaphors that have been made about Los Angeles that all kind of boil down to the same. Like, I thought it was going to be this and we were led astray, whether it's about how a movie set is literally like a fake background, or the people that you meet who are actors or in the film industry are literally putting on a show. Tons of people have made that type of reference, but in my book, I wanted to talk specifically more about like the personal growth that I wanted to do, the this version of myself that I was hoping to be in Los Angeles, and how that version of myself just didn't exist. It never could, never was meant to be. And so it was less about the city at the end of the day. It was more about like what I thought the city could do for me. And it wasn't meant to be in that end. And you have to bring your own aspirations for growth to the table. So there are a couple of those. Like, I mean, a country song for LA is like, that one I just personally love, because, and I hate saying like I love my own poem. It sounds very narcissistic.
No, I feel like that's a myth that you can't like your own work. Like your own work, it's good work.
There are a handful that I'm like, I don't have to burn these. There are a handful that I'm like, these can be seen.
And that's writing. That's writing.
That's what we live for.
That's what we live for.
But yeah, I don't know. Like, a country song for LA is like a perfect one of just like, this was real. Like let's see here. I think I have like stained dress shirts paying my arrogant rent. Is this busted pride worth every cent? I don't think that's a good stanza, but I think it's the truest because it's not a good stanza, but I think I distinctly remember like coming back from I used to work this like white collar job, and it paid the bills, and I was just running back and forth all across the city doing dinners with clients, and God, and I always had these white shirts that were covered in like yellow stains. And I was just like, now I have to take this to the wall. And you know, constantly on the dry cleaner, constantly looking in the backseat of my car. And I'm like, what is this for? Like, what is this like accomplishing? And I think that's a thing that everyone in their 20s should, or not should, but does feel. And, not that I would wish that on anybody, but I think it's something you should feel. You should question what you're doing, what you're trying to accomplish. And that was my moment, and I just happened to make it a funny thing. Like it's just like singing Purple Rain in the Pollo Loco drive-thru is absolutely a real thing that happened.
Yes, been there. I probably was doing the same thing last week. Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, I'm being healthy, right? Like, like I'll take the chicken skin off of it, and chicken and rice, and it's just.
You're just like, what? And then that's what then question, what am I doing? What is this for? It comes to mind. And you're just like, oh God, I'm in this El Pollo Loco parking lot, and I've been singing the same song for like just a good 20 minutes. What's happening?
True. And then it turns into like a comforting thing, like a Pavlovian response. I actually have a Pavlovian response with certain songs that I'll hear that I used to listen to in traffic, and I'll just be like, oh God. And I'm like, wait, no, it's fine. Like everything's okay. But it's like a get ready for the dread. And I'm like, oh wait, no, actually everything's okay. Or like, or like Purple Rain makes me want Pollo Loco, ironically. But there you go. So there's that. There's that sadness.
And a part of, I mean, a part of what you just described too sounded a lot to me like where you're saying this version of yourself never got to really exist, and you had to come to terms with that. It sounds a little bit like grief in a way, you're this thing that you thought or that existed for you in your mind, you had to like walk away from. And that is, I mean, I feel like a version of grief where you're going through like acceptance of that, the stages of grief. And like, yeah, I mean, thank you. I mean, but it's also like a real thing that people should talk about more, in the sense of like being in your 20s is a lot of grief of like, this is what I thought I was going to be. This is what I went to school for. This is what I moved out to LA for. This is what I thought I was going to do, and how much money I was going to make, and what was going to make me happy. And you had to like, reframe it, like make it a little bit change, be more fluid in your mind, but you have to also walk away from those ideas. And I feel like, it should be talked about more. And I feel like your poetry does.
I completely agree. I think that's a fantastic take. I think that's completely accurate. I think that you're right. There is a lot of mourning in this. I mean, would you agree that our expectations have just been like absolutely like juiced up?
Well, I mean,
it's like, how are we not both co-presidents right now? Like you and I should be co-presidents, astronauts, and also and at least, if not professional athletes, aspiring.
Oh, mine was a professional Broadway performer. Like I would be doing like a Nathan Lane type person out there in the world. But yeah, you listen, every day I ask myself, I'm like, I'm like sitting on my couch watching these performances, like, I could do that. That's what I should have been. I feel like that's good, that idea, that like Sunset Boulevard type persona where I'm like, this is what I was, and this is who I could have been while like smoking
100%
cigarette. Yeah. And just, it's real though. I feel like that's also to talk back to like the millennial idea, like a millennial thing of like questioning, why are we doing these things that we were told we should be doing? Why were we, settling for careers that don't make us happy? Or why are we not pursuing our dreams in these ways? it definitely is a generational like evolution of like what is our personalities and what is expected of us.
Could not agree more. Yeah, it's expectations meeting. It's such a strange. You can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So why haven't you done it? Versus, I want to do what I want.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this strange fighting expectations versus knowing that people are going to expect more of you, regardless of the fact that like, are you and I going to be able to be like full on homeowners with Social Security and all these like it's the existential thing too. Is that like
no, it's but
and so it's a beautiful thing though. It's like what I talk about this in my poetry. I'm talking about this in some of my future stuff. Is that like we have every right to be freaked out. We have every right to be like, what is going to happen? But like the more that I talk to people, especially after the pandemic, and that's what a lot of my recent stuff is thinking about too. But like before that, I could see that people had this like, fuck it, like what's gonna happen? Like I could die tomorrow. I could live to be 90. The planet could explode. I hope it doesn't. But you know, we could all die from global warming. We could all, you know, like there's a like I mean, you could literally like if the pandemic, you know, just wiped everybody out or whatever. It's like those are things that millennials are very conscious of, which leads us to make good decisions and leads us to make bad decisions. But it's something that I am very proud of that our generation holds so close to the chest.
Yeah.
It's something like I talk to my mom about it all the time. I'm like, we're the most existential generation, and like that's going to create beautiful art. That's going to create interesting people, but it's also like terrifying.
Yeah. It's like it feels like we're just like being given this manual that says this is how things are supposed to be done, and for the first time we're like, why? We're like, everyone's like looking through this like, why am I doing this, asking that question of like there has to be more to all of this than just like the 9 to 5, the homeowners. Like you were saying, like, yes, we would buy homes, we would have Social Security. I told my mom this other day and she was like, what? She couldn't understand it. I was like, I don't think I ever want to own a home. I like it at my apartment. I like my space. I don't want like this huge thing to take care of. That like becomes like a part of me. And she was like, what do you mean? Like, you don't. You want a house. I'm like, I don't think I do. And maybe I'll change in 10 years, but like at this point, it's not for me. It's a thing that like I think other people who want it, but like I should be okay with the fact that I don't. And there's like so many things that are like that. I feel like the institution of like marriage is changing like that. The institution of careers, of thoughts of like what we should be doing, or even like people who are intersectional in what they're doing, like who are both doctors who do stand-up comedy because they're like, this is they could be an amazing stand-up comic, but they're like, just they loved being a doctor more. Or like I met someone the other day who's a writer but also is a teacher, like a great writer, could be like wants to further their writing career, but they're like, I never want to stop teaching. This is something I love doing and I don't want to ever do that. And it's different. It's a different thing than it was before.
It's beautiful. I love it. You just meet so many more interesting people, and people who are like nobody is one dimensional. Like, I mean, I believe that people who consider themselves one dimensional or seem one dimensional have something else that they're not even realizing is something else they could explore. Before, obviously, like for the longest time, you were grinding out the 9 to 5. You were focused on this, focused on that. Time was eaten up. Time was appropriated in certain ways. But like everything has constantly been changing and keeping up with how much the branches. I mean, it's just exponential. Like it's exponential how much like people are able to take life into their own hands, how they're able to do it, what they're able to do with that, and the personalities you'll meet, the people who have chosen different lifestyles. it's just going to become more, one day you're going to meet a hairdresser, go-go dance. Well, I've had that there's a lot of hairdresser go-go dancers. I'm trying to think of things off the top of my head, like hairdresser, doctor, go-go dancer, neon light creator. I'm looking at things around the wall. I'm trying to put shit together. But like,
I'm guessing you have a go-go dancer on the wall, just like a go-go dancer hairdresser. Just that when you say you're just looking things around the wall, I'm like, do you have a go-go dresser just there?
No, I mean, look, I'm a mysterious man, so I'll look it up to you.
Listen, no judgment
There's
at all.
things going on these walls behind me, so I'm pulling from some interesting content. But the point stands. The point stands that I don't know. It's a very terrifying but interesting time to be alive, which has always been the case. So we're gonna be fine. But back to the poetry, which I feel like I love this. Like, see, this is the type of thing I live for. I go hang out with talking about convivir. So convivir literally for me is like I said before, the most important word for me in Spanish, one of the most important words for me ever. And like my favorite thing to do is literally drink Fernet, sit outside and just be like, let's bullshit this and that and the other. And pulling from that and pulling from those conversations gives me a lot of input for my work. And it's something that I feel like should be practiced more in our generation specifically. So I hope that does happen.
No, I mean, one of the things that came out of me jumped out at me when I was reading your work. I was like, let me phrase this the right way. Maybe I am drinking Fernet right now. No, one of the things that jumped out at me was like, yeah, this is something that feels very contemporary while also feeling like representative of like, feelings that a lot of people my age are having. Feelings that like me and friends of mine are talking about with each other. Like, just things that I think are very important and are not said or, not perceived in media. Like how I feel like there's always this idea of like people our age having these specific stereotypes, like we're lazy, we don't want to work, or we always want to like go out and blah blah, but we don't want to spend money on like houses and what else? I don't know. Diamonds. Wasn't that something that they were like, millennials are making the diamond industry go away? Like stuff like that. But this felt like, oh no, we're just going through this. We're seeing this change in the world firsthand, because I feel like we're so close to the past and so close to the future that we exist in a very weird middle where we're trying to survive. And I felt that while reading this.
Definitely. Yeah. Awesome. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, we're definitely in a huge gray area, and it's hard to explain that without sounding whiny. And I hope that I can kind of talk about like, I have a couple of pieces that are about like, there's one about a long distance relationship that is, peppered with references to contemporary life, but it's the same story, but a long distance relationship in LA is 35 minutes away, right?
Yeah.
And it's this weird yearning that exists only in LA, but it's peppered in with like, yeah, but you know what documentaries I like, and my iPhone password, and I know that you're wearing those Doc Martens that I like again. But those are such weirdly specific things that point at the same thing that's universal of like the yearning. And I think that a lot of things that everyone likes to complain about are things that we're complaining about them. And I think a lot of the things that we yearn for are universal, and we're just expressing it in different ways. One of the things that I talked about with one of my friends the other day is stories are the same point being made in different ways that are accessible to the person involved. Because for whom the bell tolls, even though I personally do not like Ernest Hemingway, but I don't like him at all, actually. But a friend of mine was reading him, and he was like, yeah, the whole point of the book is like, you could die tomorrow, and like, oh my God, like, what are we doing now? And I'm like, okay, so, millennials are, being, hated on for that. And I was like, yeah, so like Ernest Hemingway said the same thing as Drake when he said YOLO, of course, the famous phrase that we all grew up with. But like, the funny thing is that like these different stories across time and space, whether it's Gertrude Stein or Sylvia Plath, or I don't know, like these different writers have always said the same thing in different ways that are accessible to you. And that's something that we are all dealing with, and that's part of what I hope that the book accomplishes. And
I mean,
and it's space.
Yeah. And like that's so important. I mean, that's so interesting to think about because we all grew up with these same phrases, but now we have to deal with so much more with them. We have to deal with the context of them, the context of like how those ideas have changed, but also stick around and why they stuck around. Like why that Ernest Hemingway, or Gertrude Stein.
Yeah, let's talk about them instead of. It's just so funny.
Yeah, right.
Because YOLO and this other writer have like have so much popularity, and they point at the same thing, but it's just like there's so many different ways to express seize the day, enjoy the moment. You only live once. Right. You die tomorrow. So I mean, it's wild.
I mean, like James Baldwin is someone I always go back to with that, where I'm just like, oh my God, he's just saying something that I just said like 2 minutes ago, but he said it like 80 years ago. 80.
That's somebody I would love to have a glass of Fernet with.
Oh my God, you're telling me I would honestly to share a glass of Fernet with James Baldwin would be like a dream. That's my time travel thing. If I got to go back in time to like have a drink with anyone, it would be just a glass of wine with James Baldwin.
Absolutely.
Right? His stuff is contemporary, and I always ask myself, why is it?
Yes, it is. Sorry, continue.
No. That's it. I just ask myself why, and that's so important though too in these days where I'm like, it's important to ask. It's important to ask why he's so contemporary today, and what does it mean by like have things changed, or was his work just so ahead of its time, or both, somewhere in the middle there? I don't know, but
he knew what was up way ahead of everybody else.
He really did, and he's one person I'm very sad doesn't like exist today to be able to just benefit from like, and a lot of it was because of him. A lot of things that happened today in a lot of ways that we've evolved is due to his work being out there and him being like, open about his ideals and himself and his identity to the world, and that's how we've changed. And I get sad that he didn't get to like also benefit from it.
He's a huge he'd be so interesting to talk about now. I mean, he'd be so disappointed in so many ways. I mean, he'd probably he'd burn down an Amazon factory himself and just be like, oh God, cannot stand.
I'd be right next to him. Right next to him.
I think that I mean, somebody's got to do something, man. This shit's out of control. Also, buy local, everybody. Everybody who's listening to this already does, I'm sure. But buy local, for God's sake. I had to explain to one of my friends why saving $3 a day on shipping time is not worth like feeding the empire. I was just like, dude, I want my kids. I don't know if I want to have kids, but I want my nephew to go to a bookstore one day. Like, I don't want that to be in the discussion. But yes, James Baldwin went down on Amazon with us, and he also would have been a great person to just like, he would have really explored the contemporary landscape of millennial writers and been like, it's talking about identity, talking about what makes you you. He was huge on that. He was huge on self-reflection and on being able to be like, I mean, like when he talks about oh my God, in the Fire Next Time, when he talks about meeting the brotherhood, and he's just like, I understand why I'm not a part of them, but I get what they're going for. Like having that strong sense of identity was probably so difficult to cultivate. I don't know. It's fantastic. He's such a great example.
And it's maybe it's the idea that he did have such a strong, maybe that's the contemporary part of James Baldwin, was that his strong sense of his own self-identity, because like, it's it wasn't like, it was supposed to be hidden. It was something that like society told him, this is not something you're supposed to like be outspoken about and share, but he was like, no, I'm going to. Maybe that's a big reason why he feels so contemporary with his time, because I feel like there's so much talk right now, especially in your poetry too, about identity. And it's like, your poetry, and I'll say this, feels like a spiritual, like great grandchild of James Baldwin's work in a way.
Oh, that's too high a praise. That's too high a praise. I appreciate that sincerely.
No, that's I feel like important to say. Yeah, identity is, and to all the James Baldwin fans, don't come after me, please. I'm a huge James Baldwin
fan. Yeah, please protect Lance.
Listen,
I don't know what it means to be African American in the United States, but
no,
shout
please.
out to Lance. I appreciate that.
No, it's in terms of I just plainly identity, and being very open about identity in a world that doesn't, in a world that often doesn't want you to be like very outspoken and very proud of your identity all the time. It feels like we're coming to a point now where someone like James Baldwin would be proud of us talking about our own identity and accepting it.
I agree with that. And
while burning down Amazon.
While burning down Amazon. I think one thing, and I don't know if we're running out of time or anything, but I do want to make a couple of points about identity in this book and a lot of other things, is that like, I'm the poet scene in Los Angeles is, wonderful. I love what Not a Cult is doing. There's a lot of wonderful people who have moved to Los Angeles who are doing their thing. I love a lot of what's going on, and I feel like honored to be included in like a Los Angeles poetry scene, etc. But when I made this book and I started handing it out to people, everyone's like, "Oh wow, like you're a poet. Like I thought you were this." I was working my white collar job. I was this and that and the other, and everyone kind of knew that I liked writing, but I just made the transition over to writing and just dedicated to myself full time. And talking to people about that transition and convincing people like, hey, like you should read my book. You should read my book. And they're like, okay, great, I'll read your book. And I'm like, no, but look at these other poets. Look at these other people who are out there. And it's not about like my identity as a poet. It's about my identity as a person. Like. Trust what I say about these other people and know what other people are doing. Poetry is a facet of of everyone's life, whether they realize it or not. When you appreciate a beautiful day, when you like feel warmth from somebody you meet on the subway, when you have a moment of pain and yearning and you just feel that beautiful, tender melancholy, we all feel that. So like, I'm happy that I was able to be the introduction to a lot of people to read poetry. And now I'm like, now go explore. There's so much more to see. There's so like poetry is a facet of everybody's life. Go see what other people's takes on it are. We're all trying to say the same thing in different ways. So find which way is accessible to you, because that's going to make a difference in your life. That's what's going to make you stop and smell the flowers every once in a while. Like that's what I feel like my job is. My job is to be a poet. My job is to introduce people to these things and to make these connections. So I hope that works.
No, I mean, I think it does. And I mean, even hearing that makes me excited for your next work and seeing, how you grow as a writer, because this is definitely like, a great starting off, not even starting off, but you know what I mean? Like a great way to introduce yourself to the world, a great way to introduce your identity and who you want to be as a writer. And I think BLUETO does a really good job of that. So congrats. Congrats. And, I feel like the readers of your book and, of your and followers of your work and the many works I feel like you're going to do in the future will definitely feel that same sentiment you just said. So thank you. I just said a bunch of words. I hope that made sense. So
I feel like that's been the theme, is that I've just been spewing And I'm hoping to kind of collect it all and just be like, all right, this is what I'm trying to say. Figure it
Right.
out.
Right, exactly. And that's writing. And that's what writing is. You got listeners, you got a very in-depth look into the writing process, which is just a bunch of words.
Honestly, yes. Like writing is like I have a million thoughts and I just have to make it a mosaic. Otherwise,
Exactly.
like I just have a bunch of shards of glass.
Yeah, which is also art, which some people also might call art. So, art is subjective to whoever's looking at it. So who knows? That your next collection should just be a bunch of words and someone puts it together. Someone else puts it together.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just make a connect the words like when you circle all the letters together.
Oh yeah.
The poem will be in there somewhere, just
somewhere.
have to circle. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's beautiful. No, Sebastian, thank you so much for this. This has been a great conversation. I like super loved your book. Wow, what a way to say that. I felt like I could have said that so much better, but my heart said no. Say it's it's a super good time. No, I did. I did. I had a really great time reading this, and I felt connected to your work. So thank you for that too.
Of course, I appreciate it.
No
can I give a final pitch for my book, if you don't mind?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't mind.
BLUETO is 52 poems, one for each week in a year. 13 poems per season. It goes with the seasons. It's a year of seasons in a city that doesn't see much change. It's all about dealing with yourself, and I hope that you enjoy it. BLUETO, BLACKTO, and I hope that you are able to enjoy going with me on this journey through a year of Los Angeles. So that's my pitch. But I wanted to get the temporal stuff out there as well. But yeah, I'm excited.
I mean, a year in Los Angeles to some might seem like, 6 years, especially this past year. Oof, that was like 20 years in one. So what I'm saying is, what a feat to go through the different seasons of Los Angeles. As a person who's from the East Coast, of the Northeast, which feels like an early spring and a late summer, and that's it. That's we fluctuate between those two times. But no, thank you so much. That was a great pitch for your book. Not even a pitch, a great summary of like the sentiment of your book. And I am so happy to have you on this podcast. Thank you again. Before we go, though, I wanted to ask if you had any last things you would like to say to our listeners and the independent bookstore community as a whole, if there was anything you would like to shout out to them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, always support local. Indie Bound is my go-to for making sure that you can connect to your local bookstore. I mean, it's like I said, do you want to be that guy who's bitching about paying an extra $3 and an extra day of shipping for your book to get there? Or do you want to be able to make sure that like, I know my dollar is going towards people like yourself, Lance, the wonderful people at SKYLIT, things like that like, I'm an indie artist myself. Like I didn't go through a publisher. I paid my money to print these books. And it means so much to us when you reach out and pay that extra $1 or $2 versus, feeding Jeff. So help out Seven, Lance, and don't help out Jeff. That's the official word to the indie community and to any potential readers. Thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate you. Anybody who is not a millennial, I promise you'll like this book as well. We got to touch into a millennial conversation, but I promise you that there will be, like I said, all writing, when it's trying to be vulnerable and truthful, is universal. And I fully believe that. So I hope that you'll get a couple tidbits out of it. Find my book in SKYLIT. Find it through me at Sebastianism on Instagram. Sebastian Moya is my name. And thank you so much, Lance. Eres todo, eres un amor, eres un gran ser. Nos vemos prontísimo.
And thank you. And to our listeners, you can find Sebastian's book right now in our podcast display at the front of the bookstore. So please go there, check it out, buy a copy, buy 2 copies, buy 3. That's it. That's the minimum. You can buy 3. And no, tell people to go out and buy it and learn this. Just get engrossed in it and just discover Sebastian, because you will be hearing his name. I would bet money on it. But thank you again, Sebastian. Thank you to our listeners. You have a great, beautiful, and wonderful day, and do something nice for yourself today. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Skylight Books podcast series. Please don't forget to visit our website at skylightbooks.com and make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more author talks and bookseller conversations. You can find us on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you back in our store soon.